Hi, it's Jonathan here from Charity Digital. It's Thursday afternoon, so it must be our regular webinar day. If you've joined us before, then welcome back. It's great to have you with us again. And if it's your first time with us, then I hope it's going to be the first of many. Now, one of the things I heard from previous webinars we've done, some of the presenters fed back to me, was there'd been a little bit of feedback to say that the Charity Digital presenters all seem to be very young. And, you know, this didn't really seem right in this time when we're meant to be a lot more diverse. So I'm here today, together with my presenter, my co-presenter Joan, to show that there are some people who are a little bit more mature in the charity digital world. Indeed, as you'll see from my grey beard, that I am well over the age of 35. And I know that Joan won't mind me saying that she started her career some time ago in the 20th century as well. So that must mean she's well over the age of 35 as well. So enough of the joking. We've got some really great content today. I'm really excited about the topic. We love talking about fundraising and income generation here at Charity Digital. It's such an important subject for the sustainability of charities overall to be able to continue the great work that you all do. But of course, one of the areas we haven't touched on quite so much is actually what is the role of data enabling you to put your story forward to your contributors, to your donors, to your commissioners in the best possible way. And so that is really the key subject that we're going to be exploring here today with Joan, who's joining us from Sage. So that's all I really want to say for now. There's some really great content that Joan's got. So I want to introduce her and hand over to her now, and I'll be coming back to you to chair the questions at the end. So over to you, Joan.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's great to be with everyone today. It's great to kind of have a chance to connect as we're winding down the year and really starting to make our plans and figure out what our strategy is for the coming year. I think it's a great time for us to pause and really consider some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So very happy to be with all of you. So today we're going to be looking at leading your organization through the disruption that has happened and occurred for all of us in 2020. And the giving trends and how we can look at those and learn from those to leverage them for greater impact. We're going to share some best practices for sharing your story. And then we're going to talk about strengthening your story with data and performance metrics and how you can leverage best-in-class technology to make that happen. So I think given our current situation with the pandemic and all of the related repercussions of the pandemic, it's really more important than ever to lead your organization well. And as we all know in the nonprofit space, our funding is kind of uncertain at this point. And in addition, our workforce, including our volunteers, are very fragile, and we really don't know exactly what the future holds. So unfortunately, as always happens, during difficult times, demand for services increases. So it's extremely challenging to sustain, to balance, and to try to move forward all at the same time. So we really, as nonprofit organizations, we have to plan and prepare to really accelerate out of this curve that we've been thrown into and into that straightaway. So while we don't necessarily know the full funding impact for our budgets and for our organizations, we do know what our mission is, and we know the needs of the people that we serve. So now is really the time to take a pause and take time to really clarify your mission and your impact and how you measure that. It'd be really great to really complete an unbiased review of your programs and kind of rethink what's going to be the best way to deliver on your mission, because we know there's going to be adjustments there. You really want to dig in to your financials and make sure that your team understands the revenue and the cost side and can really access the true cost of the impact that they're achieving, because this is going to help you really break through some of the impediments that we have in front of us right now, and really help you kind of set the tone and the strategy to make sure that your organization and its funding is sustained going forward. So we all know that we're trying to figure out and adapt to this new normal that we find ourselves in the midst of. And for nonprofit organizations, focusing on being able to ramp up our organizations into this recovery is really going to be key. So as we think about leading the organization through this time and ramping up for a faster recovery, I wanted to share some links with you. So when you get a copy of this, you'll be able to click through those and check out these resources that we've prepared over the last 7 months to really help nonprofit organizations kind of figure out where they can get additional information, tools, and what they can do from a strategy and a planning perspective. So take advantage of that. And really what we're experiencing and learning and overcoming is going to serve us well when we encounter other disruptions in the future. So I think this really allows us to kind of learn how to quickly adapt to ensure that our mission and our impact is going to be sustained. So let's take a look at the latest giving insights and what that means for us and how we can leverage those. I think when we asked charities in the UK, what is it that they most needed from the government to help them through this COVID-19 outbreak, pandemic, and all the related repercussions, the majority of folks really responded that they wanted unconditional cash grants. And you can see here the list and the priorities as we go down. So obviously it's important to have unrestricted cash available. And we know that a lot of folks are going to have to actually draw on those emergency funds. So I think the good thing is that everyone's very aware of the situation that we're in and is understanding and empathetic to what's going on. So I think this allows for an environment that allows people to be more receptive to our message and to giving and to supporting organizations, especially because of maybe the unplanned or unexpected needs that are going to be that are out there. So I think it's a great time for us in a way to figure out kind of how to better message and how to better reach potential donors. So when we looked at some of the metrics, and we saw this one, and when we look at what ways people are donating, because a lot of our funding reports, they're a year or so after the fact. So we're kind of trying to figure out what exactly is going on in 2020 before that information has really been released. So when we look at this, 34% says they're likely to donate to local charities, 40% likely to donate to NHS charities, and 45% likely to donate to a food bank. And I think this is the important thing. These are good numbers and they're strong numbers. And I think that it's really indicative of people understanding kind of the pain that's out there and how they can immediately respond to it. So while they're looking for places to immediately respond and support and help, this is an important time for us to really know and be very specific about the need that is out there and how our organization is plugging into that and participating in that and being able to leverage that so that we can really be at the forefront of responding to the situation. So when we look at the situation for the first 6 months of 2020 in the UK, we got these insights from Charities Aid Foundation. So when we look at it, we see January to June was at 4.8, and then 4.6 in 2019, and we're up to 5.4 for the same 6-month period in 2020. So that's a great trend because people are out of work, not able to work. So a lot of times we will see the funding drop off, but obviously they're aware of the needs and they're wanting to be able to give back and help support their community. So I think there's some really strong indicators that giving is not going to be as far off as we had first thought it might be. So I think this is a really good trend. When we look at the gifts that come in and the donations received by nonprofit organizations, this gives you the breakout of the cause areas that they go to. So just as in the US, in the UK, religious organizations receive the largest portion of gifts. And then you see the other areas, healthcare and human services and such, that are receiving these funds. And I think one of the important things to remember as you look at data and as you're looking at where it's actually being given and how it's being spent, when you look at the religious organizations, oftentimes these organizations have, in addition to having like a congregation, they also have serving centers, they have human services ministries, they have schools. So there's a lot of other cause areas that we would typically identify that religious funding is going to. So just something to keep in mind there. I really like this data because I think it really shows us where there's opportunities and where we can just take the analysis and learn how we can kind of scope our plans from a fundraising perspective, but also from an engagement with our donor perspective. And I think you see here, when you look at the age groups and the generational groups here, that's quite a good number of people that are giving on a monthly basis. And obviously we know the silent generation, we know the baby boomers, so we kind of know how they give and when they give, and you know, they're used to giving and we've depended on them for a long time. But I think it's great to see these younger generations, especially in this group that's from time to time giving. I think that's where we really want to figure out, how do we engage with these generational groups right here that are the time to time giving. Obviously they're open to giving. So I think it's really important for us to figure out exactly what is going to be our plan to have more engagement with those folks and be able to move them to the left there into that monthly or weekly giving, because then they're going to become more engaged with our mission. They're going to become more involved in what we're doing, and they're going to give us that sustainability in our funding that we're looking for. So this slide, I think, is a great one. We do something similar in the US where we track giving to, you know, all of these, the stock market and all of these types of indicators. And it's very consistent. And I'm seeing the same thing here with the UK numbers. You see the stock market, you see the consumer confidence index, the revenue income for nonprofits. Obviously, it tracks to all of these indicators and very clearly and strongly to the stock market. So we know that that's one of the indicators that we have to plan for and to follow and to stay on track with. And honestly, we, you know, 2020, you know, we had a huge crash in the stock market. And then, you know, there was kind of panic in the nonprofit sector because we didn't know what this was going to do to our giving. The good news is the stock market has been very stable for the last 3 or 4 months. And I think that's very good news for us in the nonprofit sector. And I think that that speaks well to us from a planning perspective when we look at maybe what we can expect and plan for and build out our strategy for the coming years. This slide really is good because it speaks to, you know, the revenue and the spending and where the trend line is. So you can see it's steadily increasing. And this is what we expect to see. This is what we want to see. And I think that's just another good sign that we need to continue forward. We need to plan that things are going to continue on. We're going to have some adjustments to make in some of our programs and staffing and volunteers and all of those types of things. But I think this gives us the chance to figure out, you know, to be flexible, to be nimble, and to really figure out how we can best deliver on our mission. And I think it gives us a strong indicator that things are going to continue on that upward path that we want to see. So let's take a look at some giving insights that we can really start to dig into to understand and figure out as we start planning and are developing our plans and figuring out exactly what our strategy is. I think what this slide best shows is, and hopefully some of this data will be useful to you as you meet with your boards and funders and donors, to explain kind of what your thinking is and how you're going about your plans and your strategy. But this really shows us that things are very consistent and there's not huge swings and huge changes. And I think that's probably a good thing for those of us in the nonprofit sector. But I think what it also tells us is that when there's not significant new opportunities or it's not significant new changes, we have to become more engaged with our donors or potential donors, all of our key stakeholders. They have to know more about what we're doing, how well we're doing it, the impact that we're having, and being able to really measure the results. Because just like in the for-profit world, in the nonprofit world, people want to see return on investment. You know, we call that return on mission in the nonprofit space. But we have to make sure that we're really leveraging everything that we can to have visibility, to have a voice in the space, and for people to be aware of what we're doing, because we want to make sure that our organization and our mission is going to continue forward and it's going to be sustained. So then when we take a look at some of the long-term giving trends in the UK, it's clear that, it's, again, very consistent. You look at the average monthly giving, I think that's one of the places we really look at to be able to figure out how we can make some gains there. The top cause areas here, as always, medical, children, human services, animal welfare. These are the types of things that are near and dear to people's heart. And we know from many, many surveys that people, their primary reason for giving is because they are connected and affiliated to the cause area, which we're going to talk about a little more when we talk about best practices in just a minute. But I think it's really important to make sure you really connect your mission and what you're doing with constituents, because that way they're very clear, very aware of what you're focused on, what you're spending, how you're spending the money that you're giving to them, or that donors are giving to them. So I think it's going to be really helpful for us as we use some of this data and information to really build a plan that communicates not only with the different generations, but also with the people that care about the things that we care about. Now, this is a great slide because it really speaks to kind of the changes in this digital transformation that we're in the midst of. Even older folks in the across the space in the sector, they are beginning to use the internet to extensively research organizations, and they're using their phones to research organizations before they give to them. So what we've learned is that significant number, 76%, are researching organizations before they choose to give. That's a big change from 20 years ago. And the number one thing they're looking for is overall efficiency. They're looking for your impact. What kind of impact are you having? What are you doing with the money that you've been given? What's your reputation? What are your operating costs? So it's going to be really important that we track and monitor this. And obviously, we don't want to spend a lot of money doing that, right? We want that to be pretty automated because we want that efficiency to be there. We want people to see the impact that we're having. And so we're going to be really digging into some of this to see how we can do this through modern technology so that we can really reflect what's happening in our organizations and really gain more interest and more engagement with our donors and potential donors as we really elevate our story and what we're doing, what we're achieving, and using automated technology to do that for us. Now, I think this is a great slide because it speaks not only to what we see from a gender perspective in giving, but it also speaks to what's happening in the space and how people are changing and how they're giving. And I think by generation, it really shows the potential, especially for some of the younger generations, where we have an opportunity to move these folks in their giving and their commitment. And you see the increases there with the little arrows. So those are quite impressive numbers. Now, obviously, we don't expect to see huge changes in the older generations because most of those people have been giving for a very long time. They have their budget often on fixed incomes, so we don't expect a lot of fluctuation there, but we have a lot of opportunities. And these are great numbers and changes on the upward side for these younger generations. So this really gives us a picture of where we need to build out a plan and a strategy to engage with these folks. I think one of the most important things we can do is look at our organization, our mission, and as we look at giving by the different generations and the number of the population in these different generations, figuring out how we kind of morph and change and adjust, as we continue to go down the timeline. You can see here, how people gave by generation. And I think it's important for us to build a plan, a communication plan, and a fundraising plan based on different generations, because obviously people in the silent generation are going to communicate more in writing and maybe traditional direct mail, whereas younger generations, they don't do that. They're interested in being able to give from their phones, to use their mobile devices to get whatever kinds of information they want to get and receive, and they have very different perspectives. So I think this is a great way to look at things for building your plan on how you want to communicate and how you want to set up your future plans to communicate and to engage with the different generations. I wanted to share this slide with you because I think it's important for us to kind of start thinking through some of these things. I know you all get these same kind of little things that I get from people that I donate to, but I thought it was really important. The biggest number from the results of this survey are 38% of the people say they would be inspired to give more if we make a compelling case of extraordinary need. We're all in the midst of a compelling case of extraordinary need right now. So we just have to figure out how best to message that and communicate that to our constituents and potential donors. And my other favorite thing from this survey was 28% said stop sending unwanted trinkets. I think that's important to us. People don't want to perceive that you're wasting money that they give you on things like mail and postage and trinkets. So I think this is something that we can learn and take with us from this, because I think it tells us, we want to stay in touch and stay on the pulse of what people are thinking and feeling and how they're expressing that. Now, this is a great slide. This is a global giving trends. And I think what it tells us is that we know that 54% of donors are really looking to give online with a credit or debit card. So that tells us that our technology has to be able to receive that. Other preferred methods of giving here, by mail, in cash, bank transfers. I think the 20% too of donors that are more likely to give if they are offered a free gift. But what that tells you is 80% are not. And I think if you really could dig into these numbers, you would see some of that 20% is probably in a very specific category. Like it reminds me of like public radio, public television, how they'll give you, a certain show or a concert or something like that. But I think the big number here is 80% of the people are not interested in this, and why free gifts do not inspire giving. I think one of the other big takeaways here is the monthly giving numbers. We know that that's, kind of all of our goals is to achieve monthly giving and consistent giving so that we can have a sustainable budget plan. 45% people said they are enrolled in a monthly giving program, and 14% give on Giving Tuesday. And I think what this really tells us is this is a key for us to be able to extend that and to grow that, especially with these younger generations. And then I think too, it's great to know on how people wish to be thanked for their giving. You can see here, this is very, very significant. 69% say they want to be thanked via email. And I think that's great because that's really inexpensive and easy for us to do. And again, people care about our efficiency. They care about how we spend our money. And so I think it's really important that we listen to that and respond to that and be able to really use that money in a way that they see as beneficial. So with that kind of as the backdrop, we're going to kind of move into the basics of best practices around sharing your story and building your story that's really going to help you engage with these donors, many of which have already been donors, maybe for a long time, maybe some of them are new, maybe they're people that don't even know about you yet, but will learn about you, and you want to become consistent donors to your organization. So as we go through this today, we're really going to be focusing on the basics here, and we're going to start with sharing the vision, building the brand, communicating the story, and expanding your reach. So I think it's really important when we communicate with potential donors, we want to make sure that we can instantly, quickly connect with folks about what we're about, what we care about, what's our priorities, what are we spending money on, what are we committed to, what is our mission? And images are very powerful in doing that. We know that they grab attention, they connect with people, and they really quickly highlight our mission. So I think it's really important to be sure that consistently across your social media, your website, your donation forms, everywhere that you can, you want to have consistent imagery, powerful imagery that lets people know instantly, this is what we're about, this is what we're focused on, and this is what our mission is. Branding, hugely important. And we know how powerful a brand can be. And it's going to really help potential donors because they're going to remember you. They're going to quickly recognize you and your organization and your mission if you do it well. And when you combine these powerful images with a well-branded message, you're really going to help donors remember, recognize you, and they're going to be aware of your impact. So this is really going to translate to greater responsiveness to your campaigns and to your needs. So we want to make sure that the messaging and the branding is a primary element of your strategy plan. And you want to be sure that it's integrated across all aspects of your communication, everything from email to tweets. You want to make sure that you have a consistent brand vision and image and awareness and a tone and message, because whether it's a digital ad, social media, any type of communication, we want to make sure that we have a consistent brand message that really carries our story. Now, I wanted to share this example with you because it's one of my favorites, and I think it really illustrates exactly what we've been talking about today. And it's so important that I think we can take lessons from each other. That's the one of the things I love about working in the nonprofit sector. Everybody shares and is willing to share because we want to, we want to help everyone be successful in their missions. And I think what I learned from this organization is you want to find your best strategists in the organization and use them to figure out what is the best way to share and communicate our most basic message. For Charity Water, they have a really quick, thoughtful, and impactful tagline: clean water changes everything. This is their homepage on their website, and it's an example of that because it's effective, it's powerful, and it instantly shows impact in how you can be a part of it. So everything you see from them, you'll see this tagline: clean water changes everything. But one of the other things I really like about their homepage on their website is it invites me to join and become a part of this. And then they have metrics everywhere. And the metrics reflect the urgency of the mission. Remember, people told us that they want an urgent and compelling need to respond to. So they're sharing the urgency of the need, and they're connecting it to you and inviting you to join and be a part of their mission. And of course, note the powerful imagery that they have. So finding the best way to communicate your mission, your priorities, and your impact are the critical elements in telling your story well and ensuring sustainability of your mission. So let's look at expanding our reach, because we know we all, as nonprofit organizations, we all need to expand our reach. And when it comes to telling your story, social media can really be a huge element of that. And I think it's really important that when we talk about these powerful images, the metrics, the messages, the branding, these are all parts and pieces to have an effective social media strategy. Videos, pictures, events, impact. These are all ways that we're going to use to expand our reach. So let's take a look at the list here. And I usually get the question when I say you need to post interactive content to build engagement and new engagement. People say, well, what do you consider interactive content? So this could be things like Twitter polls, a Q&A session on Instagram, a Facebook survey. You might ask your audience to share their stories through status updates. And one of the key things here is you want to always include hashtag to increase your reach. Hashtag examples, are like, where you just say hashtag a power of kindness, which is one of my favorite ones. And I think what it does is it connects to your brand, right? So one of the things we see is that wherever you see social media, from the British Red Cross, where you see digital ads, where you see any kind of communication from them, you see hashtag power of kindness. That's totally connected to their brand now. And it's a powerful tagline, just like Charity Water, clean water changes everything. It's important for us to build up our brand, build up our communication strategy, expand our reach by using these basic tools that are really going to make it easy for people to connect with us, understand what we're about, and want to be a part of it. We've talked about the visuals to drive traffic, and I think it's really important to understand that. So on like Twitter, for instance, you get 3 times the views if you have a video or photo. Now, we all know in the programs that we're involved in, we have great images, we have great videos, because there's all different kinds of events, there's different kind of programs going on. All we have to do is add some of those images to our tweets, and they're going to get 3 times the views. That's what we want. We want to expand that reach. Facebook, I think it's 2.3 times more engagement when you have a video or an image. So that's really important as we kind of figure out what our plan is with our strategy, especially in social media, which is going to become more and more important with these younger generations. So one of the other things you want to make sure you're doing is making it easy to donate. The younger generations and even people my age, we like to do it easy. We like to do it on our phones. So you want to make sure that your technology supports making it easy for them to do from mobile devices. And then you want to schedule your social media posts because, we're not all, standing there with our phones on Twitter ready to tweet something out every second of the day. So it's really important that we kind of schedule our social media posts and that we have, we know what the plan is, we know what the strategy is, we know what the theme is, we know who's going to be posting what, when, and you can do that. There's some great tools available to you to help you kind of schedule ahead of time. So you make sure you have good coverage, you make sure you have consistent coverage. So you want to take advantage of that as well. So now we're going to move into the strengthening your story with data and performance metrics. And one of the things, again, this is another page on the Charity Water website. But what I really love about this is that people care about the return on mission. They care about the impact that your organization is having. Because really, they're like us. They're asking themselves, who can do the most good with the money that I have to give? Who is showing impact, accountability, and laser focused on mission success? Well, Charity Water really shows you what their key metrics are front and center on their website. This is showing you what they're tracking, how they measure impact, and you see it across their website. It's always predominant in their website. So it can be hard sometimes for potential donors to get this kind of information. A lot of organizations don't track it, they don't publish it, they don't make it easy to access and find. Well, we don't want to be one of those organizations where people just skip over us because we want to make it really easy for them to understand. This is how many clean water wells we've done. This is how many people have clean water because of what we've done. This is how many countries we're working in. Here's what our progress is. These are the kinds of things that you want to track and measure. Now, obviously, you don't want to spend all your resources manually doing this, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But I think the really important thing is that this type of tracking and measurement really makes it you able to engage with people online that may otherwise never have known about you and what you do. And we know how important transparency is today. So this is one other page off of the Charity Water website that really shows you what they're all about and how transparent they are. So it's so important these days to kind of to tell this in your story. We've seen this from the data. Potential donors research, look into, how you're performing in all of these areas. So I think this is one of the things that I like the best about this is you look at the first button here. It's like we prove every project. They have all the expense, all the investment, all the cost, how many people were involved, how many people were helped. Here's the GPS location of this well. Here's all the information about this project. It's an open book. They've received the highest grades available for accountability and transparency. And here's a button, view their financials. And then my favorite thing, 100% goes to the field. So 100% of what we give to this organization goes to the field, to the mission. Now, they have private donors that support their back office. Obviously, they have back office expenses, but that's coming from a private donor. So they're letting me know right up front, whatever I give is going to the field. This is really powerful. And I'm not saying that everyone can do this, but I'm saying this is a good tool for us to look at to really understand and learn what matters to folks, what they're interested in, and really how we can learn from people that have been really successful at this. Because it's really all about linking your metrics to your mission and to your financials. You know, those two, there used to be kind of this big gap between the development side of the house and the financial operations side of the organization. And what we're talking about really bridges the gap, because if we really plan together, work together, link our metrics to our mission, we're going to be more successful in funding our organizations, but also in the impact that we're able to achieve. So you might be looking at reading levels achieved, or meals served, or wells that you've drilled, the number of patients that you've seen by practice area, the cost per patient seen, the cost per meal served. So these are the types of ways we can connect our mission to the other piece of the puzzle. Because it's great if we can serve 10,000 meals. Well, what was the cost per meal? You know, have we been able to improve that over time? These are the types of things that we want to be able to track and measure and show. One of the things I like to share is that while Sage is a for-profit technology company, we measure ourselves based on how we're able to improve the results and the impact of the nonprofit organizations that we serve. So like, here's you're looking at Meals on Wheels, World Learning, huge impacts from technology, because the technology allows them to automate these processes and these metrics we've been talking about. And it allows them to be able to take the learning and the analysis from that and make better decisions and shift more money from the operations side to the actual program side, where we're going to see the impact. So I think it's really important to look at things from this perspective, because you know, nobody wants to just spend money for technology's sake. We want to spend money because it's going to make us better off as an organization. This is my favorite example, Room to Read. It's a worldwide organization that helps children learn to read and helps support them in being able to take care of themselves and build a business. And they were able to improve productivity worldwide by 25%. That translates to over $6 million every year. That gives them the funds to transform the lives of an additional 100,000 children every year. That's impact. That's what matters to donors. That's what we want to show. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to achieve. This is a small example because I think it's good just to show, even for smaller organizations, you know, that aren't huge international organizations. This is a food bank and a soup kitchen, and they were able to serve an additional 80,000 meals a year just because of the cash flow that they were able to find with the technology that they're using from Sage Intacct. So I think these are the kinds of stories, these are the ways we build the stories and really help people understand what we're talking about. And real quickly, because I want to have time for questions. So the technology application we're talking about doing this, Sage Intacct is, I'm sure you're familiar with Sage, but this is the Intacct product in Sage. And it's a financial management application. But the great thing about it is it's open API, it's true cloud, and it brings in your statistical information. So that could be from your CRM system or some other kind of system if you're a medical organization. But it brings those information in and it marries it up to the financial side. So you can look at cost per patient seen. You can look at cost per meal served, or how much did you spend to raise a reading level for a child. At the same time, it's doing all those normal things that you would expect from financial management, you know, from budget to actual to trends in cash, all of the things that are critical, but it's doing it in an automated way and in real time. So these numbers and metrics and scorecards that you're seeing, this is a dashboard in real time. This is actually bringing in information from Salesforce, the CRM, and it's automating all of these scorecards. So we know we can make instant decisions in real time that we need to. We might need to expand a program for immunizations, or we might need to shift locations for certain types of programs. But we have that, and we're not digging through spreadsheets and files and paper documents. We're looking at it in real time, automated, because it's bringing the information together. And this is the power of modern technology. And this is the type of information that we're talking about, and technology that's being able to bring that together, marry the parts up between the CRM and the finance and accounting side and operations side, and then be able to reflect that information in whatever way, whatever role you have, that really allows you to make better decisions, better time. It's all integrated because it's all cloud, open API, which just means you can plug and play between different types of system, whether it's your fundraising, donor management system, your payroll system, your accounting system, whatever that might look like. That's extremely powerful. And that's what allows you to do the types of things we've been looking at and showing today. And I think it's really important to understand this is, again, as part of bridging that gap between the fundraising side of the house and the operational side of the house, and being able to we're not spending a lot of time doing reconciliations because it's always in sync all the time, which is an amazing concept if you've been in the nonprofit space for very long. So this is the power of modern technology and something that you can take advantage of to make sure your organization is set for the future, and that you're constantly in real time, your board is drilling down, looking at, seeing the metrics and the information, the numbers, and helping you make better decisions, making them faster so that you have greater impact, because that's what it's all about. So you can see here just some of the many types of organizations, all types of nonprofit organizations that are using Sage Intacct, and they've had these kinds of results. Obviously, they're not looking to spend more money. So our whole goal is to help them make more money and move more money to their program areas, and make that return on mission really significant, and help them be able to do more with less. So I think, Jonathan, that wraps up my content. So I wanted to see if you have some questions.
Okay, yes, we certainly have. We've got plenty of questions, and if anybody wants to add to those, now is a great time to be entering them into the Q&A box. There's been a lot of upvoting going on as well, so I'm going to kind of do this in voting order, starting with the most popular ones first. But just before I go into that, I just want to thank you for really interesting presentation, Joan. I felt there was a great blend of statistics there. There's some good research in the UK you've picked out, but then it was really nice to be able to supplement that with some data from, like the US and global views, where those data points aren't available in the UK, but I think they probably track across anyway. So that's really interesting. And then obviously the key point in backing up the argument with data fundamentally. But let's go to the questions. So the first one, 16 upvotes on this one. So it's a really popular area. So it says the focus seems to be on national and high profile organizations with full PR support. How can this, I guess the concepts you've been talking about, be applied to local charities whose online presence will be little more than a Facebook page or a local group, and where funding has to come from the local community, which may even be rural, or through grants?
Well, I think one of the reasons I shared that image with you from that small food bank in Oklahoma is because I think that's a perfect example. And, sometimes you may only have Facebook, but there's great tools for using Facebook to really get more engagement, to get people knowing what you're about, to get people talking about what you're doing and the success that you're having. And I think that's especially powerful at the local level. I think one of the ways that people really get engagement in people showing up and giving, I know there's a local organization that has no national recognition or influence, but and I no longer live in my hometown. But you know what? I send money to those people because I know who they are. I know the people they serve, and I know how good they are at what they do. And so I will always be connected to them. So I think that's how we leverage this to make it more powerful. You want to make sure that people in your local area know what you're doing, know what you're about, share your successes. Volunteer to speak everywhere you get the opportunity to speak. Volunteer to, share little videos and things like that. I think, whether it's at churches or whether it's at, community civic events, there's all kinds of opportunities. And we just have to raise our hand and say, yes, I want to tell what we do. I want to show what we do. And here's the power of that. And then, when you have this type of information and technology, it allows you to just really enhance that story, and people jump on board.
Yeah, so kind of the key principles are the same, really, aren't they, regardless of the size of the organization? It's just that as you get larger, it gets more complex to do it, and therefore you need more and more help in terms of the technology to actually enable it. Let's go to the next question. It's a bit of more of a social media question, but it's from Jason, and Jason is asking, would you repeat posts across all social media platforms, or would you tailor a post specifically for, say, Facebook, Twitter, etc.? And in terms of scheduling, would it be better to live post to reach more people, or would you schedule it? And I don't know if you view social media as your area of expertise, but I'll sort of give you a go on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I tend to balance that out a little bit. I like to live tweet. And I think it depends on the platform you're using. Some of the platforms that are very much more visual oriented versus text, and I think you have to adjust them. I think the message is still the same, and there's certain aspects, like the hashtag, that's always going to be the same. And images are always great, but I think, like for LinkedIn, for instance, it's going to be different than for Facebook. But to me, it's a balance of both. You want to do it live, you want to do it scheduled. So that's why the tool helps, because you can fill in the blanks with that, and then do live when you're going to be able to do live posts.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So for Jason and anyone else who's interested, we've actually carried a lot of content on subject of social media as well. We generally buy strongly into the principle of tailor your content to the platform. So don't just duplicate exactly the same content onto multiple ones. And I think if what you're broadcasting links to something that's very topical, something that's happening live, then you want to do it live. I think the planned impact you can get from scheduling is good to then blend on top of that live stuff as well. So as Jane says, that combination is best. Let's now go to Janine. Janine is asking, do you think that COVID will have influenced how the different generations donate?
You know what? It's, the numbers that I've been able to pull so far, it looks like to me that it is. I think it's going to bring in younger people that maybe have not been involved in charitable work and in giving as much. I think it's bringing them into the picture because they've been brought into this pandemic. Many of them actually with the virus. So I think it's just making people more aware, and maybe making people more aware of their community and the needs in their community. So I think we're going to see not only obviously, there's people that aren't going to be able to give that may have given in the past, but I think there's going to be a new window of opportunity and younger people participating. That's my hope. And it looks like to me it's going that direction. So I'm very hopeful that that will be the case.
Yeah. And Maggie's really picked up on my opening comments on age. And she said every interview she's done with funders has been conducted by young women in their late 20s, early 30s. So I guess she's saying those are most of the people who seem to be employed by the funders. And this septuagenarian doesn't speak their language and they don't understand hers. Any suggestions as to what she should do?
Well, I think it's really helpful, when you're working on figuring out your plan and your strategy and how you're going to go about it. It's really great to have a diverse team and group to work with and put that together. I work with some people my age, but some people that are a lot younger than me. And so I think it's really helpful and important to have that kind of balance of generational representation in your planning and in your brainstorming and in your communication plan. And I think that's going to be the best way that you can make sure that you kind of get that perspective and that understanding, and you can prepare, to have those kind of different generational plans ready to go, because it is going to be different. And you can't expect, like my kids are, they kind of make fun of me because they're like, Mom, nobody else your age does social media. Why are you doing social media? I'm like, well, it's just kind of part of, the evolution of my career and what I've done. But I think it's interesting that their perspective, of somebody my age, and then their perspective of their friends. So I think if you can incorporate them into the plan, you're going to have the most success there.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess part of the challenge here is if you want their money, you have to speak their language. You have to cross their bridge rather than expect them to come to you. It's quite a tough message, that one. So I'd really encourage anyone in that position to kind of try and lap up as much free training as they can. We do a lot free, obviously, and I know other organizations do, which can then actually help to prepare for those conversations. It's difficult, I realize, but if you want their money, I think you have to go to where they are, unfortunately. Question on very Sage specific question here. So and it's asking what's the cost for small organizations for Sage Intact. I don't know if it's possible to actually quote that kind of like directly, or whether you actually need further information, and therefore it's something
Yeah.
best taken offline, but maybe
Well,
you
just
can
from a high
reply as
level,
best.
it's subscription based. Again, True Cloud, so it's subscription based, and it depends on the number of accounting users that you have, and small organizations don't have that many. There's also some other types of situations set up. There is also, we're part of Sage Foundation, it's part of our organization. So there's, discounts for nonprofit organizations as well. So there's a whole lot of different options in ways that, so yeah, if you take that offline with the salesperson, they can kind of help walk you through that.
Yeah, so that was anonymous, that attendee. So either message in or wait to be contacted. You'll get some kind of communication after this webinar anyway. So respond to that, or as I say, you can message in via us in advance if you want it to be picked up more quickly. Really very, very relevant question here, because I know it's something that concerns a lot of charitable organizations, and that is any hints on persuading grant providers to give unrestricted funds rather than the preference for just funding a specific project?
That's a tough one. I do think that there's a lot of pressure on these folks for understanding and empathy given the current situation. At the same time, some of it they really don't have that much control over. So it really depends on the foundation or the specifics of the trust, or wherever that money is coming from, as to if there's any flexibility there. I do think that there's some global pressure there for them to do that, and I think we'll see some of that. But then there's some that I think just from a legal perspective won't be able to do that. So I think we have to work with what we can get, and where there is flexibility, and to ask the questions and to push for that.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, some of the funders in the UK allow you to apply an overhead allocation to your funding request. So, they say, what's the project going to cost in terms of direct costs? And then you can apply, say, 20% overhead uplift on top of that. It's really useful if you can actually go after those funds and get that recovery, because if all of your projects are funded in that way, you can recover nearly all your overheads. Of course, you do need to have a way of tracking what those overheads are to be able to do that. But it's definitely worth looking into that. We've actually bid for, so we're part of the Heritage Digital Consortium here at Charity Digital, and that project is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and they do allow some overhead recovery as an example of that. Going to move along. Another question from Maggie, very different type of question this actually. She's commenting on the fact that savings accounts may become negative shortly. Even if they're not negative, they're pretty small, the interest rates you get at the moment, often less than 1%. So she's saying, is there any opportunity to get funding from the baby boomer generation, so maybe people who've got a lot of capital, by offering them some kind of fixed interest of 2 to 3% against collateral? And she's saying this because they've got a project called Third Age Hosteling and Housing, where they've got 4 derelict properties which they need around £400,000 to renovate. So there's an asset there in those properties, and is there a way of getting the funding from people, I guess, from philanthropic people against those assets?
Well, that's interesting. I was talking with a woman a couple months ago who's out on the west coast of the US, and they are doing some really interesting impact investment and doing these types of things where they are serving as the bank, if you will, the foundation is, and they are supplementing, the interest rate and the cost of money to do these kinds of projects. So they see that as part of their mission, and part of what they want to be about for these people that are actually the hands-on doing that type of work. So I think there's going to be a lot more creativity to come, which is a good thing. And I think there are going to be more and more people that do that type of impact investment. And I think we just have to be able to look for them and find them, and know who those people are and where to go.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area. So we did digital fundraising day in 2020 that some of the people with us today might have joined, but we also did one in 2019. And in time with that event, we released an ebook called The Future of Money Making for Charities. And we talked about a lot of the other kind of fundraising channels. So social investment, which you've obviously touched on there, Joan. Also something called the community shares model, which is you get people in the community where the asset is to actually invest in it. So they then use it as well. And we talk about some other models as well. What we'll do is we'll publish the link to that ebook in the resources to this webinar when all of those go up in about a week's time, so you can download it. And I think that's actually a topic we should probably visit for a future webinar and dig into, or maybe at our conference, which is coming up in early March, and dig into in a bit more detail, because I think it is a subject that's going to be increasingly on the agenda and an opportunity. So where should we go next? So I'm conscious of the time. We are at the official end time, but we haven't got that many open questions. So what I'd like to do is just run on a little bit longer for those who are able to stick with us. So we can answer more of those. So do testimonials, this is from David, do testimonials make people more likely to donate?
What I've seen and experienced is that it's the testimonial along with the very specific tie to results. So again, it's the impact. What is that actually doing? And as specific as possible. So when you can get people to connect, well, it's one thing to say, we found $500,000 in cash flow benefit. Well, okay, so what does that translate to? So I think as long as you can translate that to specific impact and make those specific, I think that's how they become powerful.
Yes. Okay, good. Thanks for that. And just skipping along, Laura is asking, any advice on sharing stories and the narrative of the charity when you've just started the role during COVID and haven't even met your colleagues in real life? So yeah, that's really a question very much of the now, isn't it?
It is. And one thing we've started doing is we've started having a lot of virtual cocktail events or happy hours or whatever you want to say, just so we can stay in touch, because we're used to, at least over here, we travel a lot and we see each other frequently because we're all at the same events and the same conferences and we're speaking at the same places. We're not getting to do that anymore. So we're just intentionally trying to schedule time, whether we actually consume alcohol or not, schedule time just to catch up with people, both personally and professionally and across the sector, to stay in touch and in contact, because I think people are really desperate to be with other people. And I think it was a little difficult at first when we started doing that, but now it's just kind of become, we're more used to it. And I think it's pretty effective, but I'm sure there's lots of ways to do that. But I think you have to be very intentional about doing it, because it's just not something we naturally do.
Yeah, it's ways of kind of recreating the water cooler moments, which obviously don't happen anymore. We do at Charity Digital, we do an all hands virtual meeting every Monday morning, which is actually quite business focused overall. But then we do 2 very informal check-ins. We call them letting off steam, when we do them at a lunchtime on a Wednesday and a Friday. And not everybody comes, but anyone can come and anyone can talk about anything. And then we've got our Christmas do next week. We're having a virtual meal for that as well. I just think it's so important to try and maintain the social fabric of our organizations, which enables then the informal communication, which builds the knowledge of people, particularly people who are new. So just moving along, Jane's asked, is Sage Intact available from the Sage Foundation?
No, it is not available from the foundation. And part of that is because Intact was acquired by Sage a couple years ago, and just we have a different place that we fit in the thing, but there are specific discounts and things through the foundation that that support that.
Yes. Okay, brilliant. I think that's about all we've got time for as well. So I want to wrap up at that point. We've had a really fascinating presentation, covered a lot of ground, and a pretty broad exploration of the topic as well through the Q&A as well. So what I'll do now is just want to quickly mention what we've got coming up. I've already touched on these a little bit. So we've got our last webinar of the year. I mentioned it earlier, which is what nobody saw coming. So we know COVID is one of those. Most of us didn't spot that. And so that's on the 17th of December. And I think that's moving back to our normal 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon slot. So I hope you can join us for that. And then I do want to put a placeholder in everybody's diary for our Be More Digital conference. It says on the 2nd of March. It's actually from the 2nd of March, because we're looking at making this a multi-day event. If you joined us for any of our more recent mini conferences like Digital Fundraising Day, Digital Leadership Day, you'll have had this kind of model where we do half a day of content. So we're going to do 2 half days of content, and we're also looking to bring in some deeper dive workshops. So we're really, really excited about what we're going to be able to do on that, really building on the virtual events we've done successfully earlier this year, but also trying to bring more of the spirit and the networking that we've had at some of our face-to-face events, like our Be More Digital conference, which was in March of this year. So put those diaries in your those dates in your diaries. Both of them are already on our website. So that's all from me. I really want to thank everybody for joining us today, and want to thank Joan for giving her time as well. So thank you and goodbye, everybody.